first 2 months, really about 2.5 months, are going to be pretty hard on the garden, and there's a lot of things working against it. And I'm not just talking about the cold. That's, you know, that's obvious. But I'm looking in the garden and I'm standing out here and I'm just realizing that we've got a couple things, a couple hurdles that we've got to get over for the next couple months, and then it's going to be downhill from there and we'll be off to the races. But if you can get your garden going through this time, keep it going, you're going to be happy. It is 12:30 right now, and look at this garden. It is shaded, man. Absolutely shaded. I mean, that's the first problem that we're gonna have in the garden, is the sun is a lot lower right now. And look, I've been doing this for a while. We've been doing the podcast for a while, and every time I mention the sun, people automatically click off. But I don't care, because it is so important that we understand that the angle of the sun makes a huge difference. And so I've said this many times, but my sun, because my sun's different than your sun, right? The sun in my yard raises in this corner and it tracks all along here until it gets there. So right now, because the angle of the sun is so low, it never breaks these trees until it gets behind me, and then we get about 3 hours of just beaming sunlight. So it's really hard right now. And as the leaves fall, it gets a little bit better, but we're in that weird period. So that's like the first hurdle we got. And I've seen this year after year in the greenhouse. The reason why I've noticed it more so in the greenhouse is typically because it doesn't get a lot of frost in here, so it stays warmer. So things grow a little bit easier in here. But we've noticed that around mid-January is when things really start to kick off. So we have a period, and unfortunately in the greenhouse it's much shorter, but I would say from late September till now, where we can really get things going. And then what we have to do is we have to just kind of get it to a point to where it can just hold on. Not even getting a lot of growth at that point. That's the issue. It's just kind of like there. But once that sun turns a corner, and you know, in my area in coastal North Carolina, we start getting a little bit more warmth, just a little bit, it really kicks off the growth and we can see it happening. But in the garden here, it's the same thing. The only thing is everything out here is a little bit more susceptible to cold, even with the low tunnels that we still haven't had to put up yet. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. I am Ben, and I am in coastal North Carolina. It is November 11th, possibly, and we still haven't had a frost, and we don't have one scheduled for our future. So we are now officially past our frost date, and it is 72 degrees. It's not 82, it's 72. And we're just enjoying it right now, and we're watching things grow, which is great. But we still have hard times ahead of us. So we've gone over sunlight. That's a big issue. And I mean, like in my yard, there's nothing I can do about it. Your yard may be a little bit different, but even if you're in a big open field, that angle's still going to mess with your plants a little bit. So just be aware of that, and just know that the game is to hold on as long as possible. The second thing we have to deal with is our weather, okay? So our weather is weird right now, especially in my area, but across the country, I see people getting weird weather day to day. And it's one of those things where it's hot and then it's cold, and then it's hot and then it's cool, and it's hot and it's cool, and it's hot and it's cool. And my personal belief, this is just a personal belief, but what I think is these cool weather crops are meant to grow when it's warm, and then as it cools down, they kind of slow down in the fall. But because we're not getting that, and we're constantly getting heat and warmth and just all that, I think it's messing up because they're trying to grow, but they can't get the sun because of the angle. So there's not really the slowdown period that we usually have. And I think it's throwing the plants for the loop. I don't know if this is for real or not, but this is just my opinion and what I think about it over the years that I've seen. So we're kind of holding on for dear life, and we're gonna see what happens. What we really need is we need the weather to cool down, and then we can start that process. For some plants, it doesn't really matter, like these Brussels sprouts. They need to grow as much as possible. I think I need to give them another shot of fertilizer just to boost them up. But you know, you go around and there's other plants that have issues, and I'm thinking, you know, this broccoli, It's limping because of the sun right now. There's nothing wrong with it. But we're not really forming heads yet, unless I check. Let's check. I think we're just about to start forming a head. So what that means is, based on what we've done this year, our timing is not too far off, so that's good. We haven't had our first frost, and we're just about to head, so we should be in the good realm of production and hopefully get this harvested by our goal of December. It's going to be really close, but everything is moving up into that direction. So if we can get a little bit cooler, because this is just a sign of stress from the heat. So, and I know it's not hot, but to this plant, it's a little bit warm, and with the sun beating down on it. So if we can get that to relieve, then I think we can get a little bit more growth going on. Again, come November, excuse me, it is November. Come mid-January, we're still gonna get plenty of cold days. But in our area, it kind of just barely starts to break. But if you combine that with the sunlight and then usually the rains, it's going to be the same thing. It kind of starts pushing, and then a lot of times what will happen is some of these plants that we have out here, well, all of them, can sit dormant until that time frame, and then boom, we harvest them, and it just kind of comes all at once. So that's the big thing. Now the third thing, and this is really important, and it's not for everybody, but at least for our area, and I've seen in your comments a lot of you are dealing with the same thing. No rain. That's an issue. That's a big issue. So we're watering, but you just can't match the rain. We talked about this earlier this year, but the rain really makes a difference. And I'll show you another thing that I think is the reason. So we use an in-ground irrigation here. We use these drip hoses, as you can see, if you can get past my weeds. So we use these, and they're great. I love them. They water deep, but the problem is the surface doesn't get real wet. So what we have is these plants have surface roots, and the surface roots I don't think are getting enough water, which obviously we could change that. We could put a sprinkler on it or something like that, but we're not going to do that. So don't even say something. What we're going to do is we're going to pray for rain, and I think that the surface roots really help. And what happens right now is it's dying off because it is so dry. We haven't had rain here. It's almost been 2 months since we've had a measurable amount of rain. I think it sprinkled the other day, which barely got anything wet. The only thing that I can say is helping is we're getting really heavy dews at night. And I know you're thinking, like, it's just dew. But the thing is when it's cooler at night, and it hasn't been very cool, but it's still cooler, but the sun's not as hard, that dew sticks around, and I think it's kind of helping limp things along. It's amazing how these things work. So we need some rain, and we don't really have much rain forecasted, but I can tell you this, couple days, we have a whopping 50% chance for rain, okay? Now, two things about that. One, that really means is there's 50% chance they're gonna be right about having rain, just not how much. Two, if let's say we got an inch of rain and we were just absolutely blessed, we would see overnight this garden change completely. That rain makes all the difference in the world. I've seen it time and time and time again. I don't think there's any amount of water that you can put to a garden to match a natural God-given rainfall. I just don't see that ever. We water and we water and we water, but when the rain comes, it's got that right acidity, it's got all the nutrients in it that it needs, and I think it really does push the garden to the next level. And when you don't have that, you kind of struggle. And it's important to realize too, at least for me, that I realize that you're not always going to get perfect conditions, and you can't always change or fix something. And this is where we sit. So we're waiting for rain. You know, we'll keep watering, we'll keep fertilizing, we'll keep tending the garden, and it will grow. But it's just going to struggle. And so the next couple months are going to be hard, and a lot of the country is actually going to be dry. The precipitation forecast for the next 2 months came out, and for most of the country, you're looking at an average to below average rainfall. And I know up and down the East Coast, it's constant. I mean, we have rain that'll come from the west of us, and then it just dries up before it gets here every single time. It's super frustrating. You know, where our crops are, they're growing, but our bees aren't producing, they're starving. So we're having to feed them because all the flowers dried up. We have an extra, as of right now, 2 weeks past our frost date, which means we have 2 extra weeks that flowers could be producing, but the nectar is dried up because there's no water going to them. So you can see it's just like throwing everything for a loop. So, I mean, it is what it is. We'll just deal with it. There's nothing you can do about it. I don't expect total crop failure, but what I expect is delayed production. I'm going to end up doing this week is clearing this section out right here so we can get our garlic in. I think the temperatures are going to drop enough to where we can start that process. I've had them in the refrigerator for about a month, so we should be meeting our pre-chill period. So we're going to go ahead and try and get them in the ground just to kind of get it out of the way. I mean, we're supposed to have a low of 42 degrees, and then for the next 7 days after that, it's supposed to be 62 degrees at night. So you can see that you get this rapid change, and as it evens out, that's when things will change. But hopefully that drop in temperature will bring some rain. So all of these things that you can't really control, but it's good to know about them, and it's good to plan for them. So all we do is we plan to let the garden kind of go dormant almost because of the sunlight. We plan for the plants to just kind of not produce as fast because of the lack of rain. And then the wild weather is kind of wild weather. We just stay on our toes and we're ready. You know what I mean? Like, I'm ready to put a low tunnel up at any point, but I'm not going to put, I planned to have a low tunnel video out for you by now, but I'm not going to put up a low tunnel if I don't have to. That's just kind of the way it works. So we're waiting for that. And if it happens, great. And if it doesn't, fine. Look, I'm not going to complain if it doesn't freeze this year. The bugs would be terrible. The pests would be terrible. The skeeters would be bad. Everything would go crazy. I've never lived here and had no frost in my whole life. And we're going to have one, but it would be crazy if it didn't happen. But I'll tell you this, I'd be kicking myself in the butt because I didn't plant a second round of tomatoes this year, and I should have.